Hello everyone, Big Seven here, back for another SuperCoach video. I scored 2,168 this week. Not too bad, all things considered. But man, I am full of rage. I am angry. I am pissed. I have a bunch of individuals and coaches, teams, whatever, that I have so much rage I need to get off my chest. Let's get straight into it. So we'll start with the whole LDU debacle and a bit of an explanation for those that aren't aware of what happened. LDU laid out about 6 minutes before the bounce, and I don't blame him or North Melbourne at all. A player gets injured, it's bigger than a player getting injured is bigger than Supercoach itself. So I'm not blaming him. I'm not blaming North. But what happened after that? You go onto the Supercoach website, you try and change things around, and the service crashed. You can't make changes to your side. You can't even see your side. The servers crashed, and it's just frankly completely unacceptable. The servers have been poor all year, so it's not as if this has happened out of the blue. It's not as if you couldn't have foreseen this happening, and so it's very disgraceful in my opinion. And you go onto Twitter. Maybe you're an LDU owner and you're hoping, okay, maybe he could potentially get unlocked or anything like that. The first communication we get out of the official SuperCoach Twitter account is at 6:15, and it's from Al Patton saying, "Very unlucky situation, SuperCoach, but to clarify, your emergency, you can use multiple emergencies in one position." This is 4 hours after the fact that it's already happened. So the North Melbourne game's come and gone. Another game's already started, and all they can do is come out and say, "Very unlucky." Yeah, it's really unlucky that your servers fucking shat the bed. Like, good on you, mate. It's really piss poor. I mean, I'm not too mad about it from a personal point of view, because it didn't cost me that many points. I already had LDU in my side, but LDU was one of the most traded in players this week. And so for people that have traded him in, it's cost them a premium score, potentially even more than that if he misses another week. It's cost them a trade, and if I'm just so pissed off about that. It's pretty disgraceful that this can happen, and it's basically swept under the rug. But yeah, anyway, now I'm in a mood. It's time to tee off on some other targets. Bevo and the Dogs, what are you doing? GWS is probably your biggest rival, but you're emulating them as much as you can. I mean, Magnus shifting around, midfielders playing out of position. Who does that sound like? It sounds like the old GWS. Bailey Smith, is he ever going to develop into a star, or is he going to be forced to play a mixture of midfield and forward his whole career? Adam Treloar, and he's a great guy, still a good player, but really, you're putting him in the midfield over Bailey Smith, Jack McRae, and Caleb Daniel. I mean, how is he getting midfield time over McRae and Bailey Smith? It's disgusting. I haven't owned either of those two players, but it's pretty disgraceful that Daniel and, to an extent, Treloar are getting midfield time over these blokes. I mean, Bevo, get a grip. Next person I want to tee off on is Sam Mitchell, and congratulations, you got your first win for the season. It was against the decimated North Melbourne side, and it's going to be your last win for a while. And I get that that's probably what you want to do, but develop your team while you're actually doing it. Cam Mackenzie is getting minimal CBAs, but he was your best midfielder in week one. So what has he done to deserve to get minimal CBAs? And again, this is a player that was on my bench this week. He would have been on my field if the bloody servers worked correctly. But still, it is frustrating as to watch football and see a player that should be playing in the midfield not in the midfield. Look at what West Coast are doing with Ruben Jinby. He looked very good in just his third game of football. And Mackenzie, yeah, he looked good playing a mixture of half forward and midfield time, but he should be playing full-time mid. You're playing a bloody project player like Connor Nash in the midfield, and even James Warple. They shouldn't be playing in the midfield ahead of Cam Mackenzie if you really want to develop this side. On that topic, James Warple, man, your career, I would be surprised if you keep playing like this and you're still on the list at the end of the year. And you're doing okay, but this last week's performance, completely unacceptable. I think your career is hanging on by a thread. I wouldn't be surprised if your midfield time gets even lower as the season goes on. I mean, why isn't Cam Mackenzie in there right now over Warple? It's disposal isn't good enough. You don't get enough of the ball considering how bad your disposal is. James Warple, you need to lift. Next person on the hit list, Justin Longmuir. I mean, what the hell have you been thinking these first couple of rounds? Playing a completely defensive game style when the back end of last year, you looked best when you were moving the ball fast. Sean Darcy isn't a forward, so congratulations on coming to that realization this week. But honestly, anyone could have seen that. And Sean Darcy yourself, you cooked for your teammates this week, but you didn't cook for the Supercoach side. You're on 90 points at halftime, and against Bailey Williams, you should have converted that into a massive score. So to only get 130, it's disappointing. You're 150 points behind Tim English now. You need to eat into that margin like you ate into that barbecue you served up your teammates. Last couple, Caniglio, Doherty, don't own you. I will at some point. I just want to say that football players are getting paid pretty well. It's a full-time sport now, and for people that have picked you, we don't want to be picking part-time butchers. Fix up your disposal, get back to your premium ways. And finally, the last coach on the hit list is Craig McRae. I can't believe you've done this. You're coaching like a master. So many rational decisions. You're making Collingwood likeable. You're making me look like a fool because of my preseason predictions. But honestly, well done. Keep up the good work. All right, now that's done. I'm a bit calmer now. I'm back into my usual demeanor, I guess. So 2,168, not too bad, all things considered. Missing LDU, obviously, with the calf complaint. So the team, as it stands right now, the three big dogs in defence, Sisley, Dawson, and Dacos, very happy with all of those as things stand. Dawson played a bit of midfield, which I think will help his scoring going forward, so very happy to own him. And then McKenna and Wilmot, both okay. Cowan, he was the one that was covering LDU, swung a few things around so I could field Cowan instead of Chesser. It should have been Cam Mackenzie if the servers worked correctly, but it's only cost me 38 points, so I'll get over that. Chesser, 42, not that great. Someone that's definitely expendable. And then Constable dropped, not really too surprising. I'm hoping he's not too far away from a recall, but we'll see how things play out. Midfield, Marcus Bontempelli, a bit disappointing considering I've paid up 618k for him. Only 89. We need him to bounce back soon. Tom Green, 100. Tough opponent. Had a decent start to the year. It's forgivable. Connor Rosé, very good performance. 126. Probably wins the showdown medal if Port Adelaide win. And then the mid prices. Warple, I touched on him before. Still getting a decent amount of CBAs, but that 45 really kills his cash gen. And Setterfield and Zeeble, I guess I'll go into those two. Both players that I traded in. So the trades I did were Doherty to Dacos. I'm pretty happy with that. And then it was Bruin and Flanders to Setterfield and Zeeble. Setterfield, I always saw as a bit of a cash grab. Still 110 average. The 140 is still in the cycle, so he still has a low break even. But if he was to go 80-ish again, then he's someone that's definitely expendable. I think people also pick Zeeble with the rationale that he would be a keeper. I'm not so sure. I think he probably goes somewhere between 90 and 100, and another low score means he is expendable for me. James Warple, I'll go into my plans for him a bit later. Hopper didn't play, so with Hopper and LDU both not playing, I ended up with Jinby and Oscar Allen filling those spots. Very happy with both of them. And Ashcroft as well, he looks like he's going to be a great player also. Ruckline, Sean Darcy, went with him for the captaincy. I was tossing up between him and LDU out. made things a bit easier, but I had the captaincy on Shrek anyway. 132, he left a massive score on the table. Had something like 50 hitouts and 20 disposals, so on another day, he could have converted that into a 180 score. But 132 as a captain, I'll take it at least. Better than last week. And then Rowan Marshall, 78. I see people are getting a bit skittish on him. He's matchups, so he's played a couple of Sam Draper, who Essendon restrict Ruckman pretty well, so not too worried about that. And then he played Darcy in round one. So two low scores, had a big score against English, who I know English scored well himself, but he's not a restrictive ruckman. So once Marshall gets through this tough patch, he's got wits this week, then we'll start to see him score pretty well after that. And then the forward line, Dunkley, Taranto, Gordon, obviously Rosie's in my midfield for now. All solid. Gordon a bit quieter. CBA's dropped a bit, but Melbourne, tough opponent. I have faith he'll bounce back. Zeeble touched on him before. Sheasel, if you don't have him, it's season over. He's absolutely amazing off halfback, 120 score. We've never seen anything like this, so it's fantastic to see. And then Cade Chandler, I think people were a bit, or maybe still are a bit worried about him getting dropped. He's not getting dropped. His tackling pressure and ability to get high up the ground, it's needed in that Melbourne outfit. So I know Cozzy comes back. I think that they need to play all three smalls in Chandler, Cozzy, and Spargo. A 90 score, did very well, scored 3 goals. It's probably not going to be an 85 average over the course of the season. I think it will be somewhere closer to like a 70 or 75. But while he's scoring well and with a soft matchup soft run of games coming up, very happy with Chandler. And then Davey and Green, I'm happy with them chugging on the bench. So looking at my side, I don't have too many issues. It's more about the players that I don't have. So Tim English, look, I kind of made my bed when I picked the side. I said in my 7 premium rucks to pick, I had him at 3. The upside was always there and visible, but his injury history, I just can't go near that. I understand if people want to, and the upside is pretty immense, but for me, he had a 5-week hamstring last year. So I started him last year. After round 5, he's out for another 5 weeks then with a hamstring, and then also gets a concussion, which takes him out for another couple of games. So very frustrating last year for owners of him. And then even this preseason, he had an adductor injury, which took him out of preseason training for a week, and also some hamstring tightness that took him out for a couple of weeks. So for me, it looks like Tim English is a ticking time bomb, and I understand that the points he's putting up, it might get away from me, but if he was to go down during upgrade season and it stops you from doing an upgrade 1 week, then I think English owners come back to the pack a little bit. So for me, if you started him, definitely a hold, but I have no interest in picking Tim English. Sean Darcy has been pretty frustrating. And he's certainly someone that could be in the firing line. But the matchups, I mean, Adelaide, he should do well. Gold Coast is a pretty scary game. So if he was to do poorly against Adelaide, I'd be very tempted to move him on. But if I am moving him on, who am I getting? I think Witts is overpriced. Had a soft start to the year aside from the Essendon game. He'll come back down to earth with a tough run of matchups. Sean Darcy obviously has a tough run. Nankervis is one that interests me a fair bit. But he's a bit more speculative. And again, he doesn't have the easiest run of matchups either. And then obviously Tim English is your high upside guy, but I think he's a ticking time bomb. I'm not going near him. And so where else does that leave me with other players that I need? Clayton Oliver is really scary as a non-owner. he could go massive this week. They are playing West Coast, and he only has a break even of 110. But I think my plan is probably to get him in next week. Once probably Setterfield and Zeeble, I'll evaluate them, and they are expendable. So in terms of other players that are must-have that I don't have, I don't think there's really many. So I think there is a pretty clear case to hold trades. But looking at break-evens and looking at players that could go out, I'm going to get rid of Warple. And it's only a 50 break-even, but that 45 score that he scored last week, that stays in his cycle for 2 weeks. So if he was to go consecutive weeks of 90, he would still only make about 25k. And at 300k, I don't really want that money locked up into a slow burn. If it's a rookie that's only making 25k in 2 weeks, then that's fine, because that's a player that's going to be sitting on your bench, not holding up valuable funds. But for me, for Warple, if he's scoring 290s and only making 25k, then that's not acceptable. And there's no guarantee that he even scores 90 in the next couple of weeks. So James Warple, he's someone that is expendable for me. And if I look at my SuperCoach Plus, look at the break-evens, there's a guy that I guess Will Phillips is an option. I'm not sold on his job security, but if he was to be named round 3, I would probably be bringing him in. The player I really am interested in at the moment, though, is Joel Amati with that negative 72 break even. There's also Caminiti there. I don't think in that role he's going to average anything more than 50, 55. And so I think he's still an option. The player I really liked the look of on the weekend was Joel Amati. He scored 78 in a fairly substantial loss. But he was getting up the ground a bit, relieving Ruckman for Laddams, who isn't really much of a Ruckman himself. And he scored 122 in the first week as well. So for me, he looks like a player that's kind of everything's clicked for. And with the negative 72 break even, he pretty much just needs to breathe and he'll make cash. So Supercoach got the projections as 60 and 66. If he was to do that, then that's a free 78k. And I think he looks really good on the weekend. I mean, yes, he is a key forward and they can be volatile, but I think he could go somewhere between 70, 75. So he can outdo those projections, in my opinion. And I think, an underrated cash cow. So it is a bit of a punt, but I don't mind the punt. So I'm doing that. And at this stage, I'm doing that. I think things can definitely change with teams. If Will Phillips was to be named, I'd probably get him over Amati. The second player I'm going to get, so it's a toss-up who I get rid of out of Chesser and Constable. Chesser, he is playing, but he is going to be a very, very slow burn. He only scored 41 on the weekend, and part of that was aided by the fact that West Coast had no fit players on the bench for the entire last quarter. So I'm leaning towards a Chesser trade out at this stage. And the player that looked really good, the break-even isn't that high. Some people are going for Buckley, which I think is okay. I don't have a real good read on him myself. But I have seen a couple of McElhaney's games, and he's been pretty impressive. So 65 average. I don't see why that doesn't continue going forward. And also with Jordan Dawson going into the midfield, it definitely leaves a bit more meat on the bones for the Adelaide defenders to get. And who are those defenders? Wayne Miller, who hasn't been a high possession type player over his career. Brodie Smith, he's been up there, like an 80, 90 average over his career, but he's getting on. So McElhaney, I think, has the potential. If he can go like a 65, 70, then he can get up to 350k. And it does suck having to go a week late on McElhaney, but I was pretty impressed by his game. So these are the two trades for me. Marty is a little bit up in the air. I think I would probably pick Phillips over Marty if Phillips does play. I'm just not confident that he does. And even if he does play, does he hold his spot for future weeks? He played this week, but Luke Davies-Uniacke, I assume, is coming back. Simkin definitely is coming back from suspension. So I'm just not convinced on the Phillips job security. And I'm happy to, yeah, I'll see how things play out. If he is named, pick him. If he isn't named, and if he was to be the sub, for instance, then I would stay away. So these are the trades as things stand. I'm fairly happy with the side. There's basically two players that I think have the potential to destroy my season. Clayton Oliver, who I think I want to try and move heaven and earth to get into my side next week. So hopefully he doesn't go too huge against West Coast, but there is every possibility that he does. And then Tim English, who I think, I know you can kill my season, but I'm not going to say confident, but I just can't pick him with that injury history. And a player like that, I feel like something is bound to go wrong with the pick, especially after everyone has to get onto him from, um, especially after all the Darcy Cameron owners have to go to someone after he unluckily got injured. I guess the other ruck option I did mention was Brody Grundy. Don't get him. He beat up on Laddams. He'll beat up on Bailey Williams this week, and he'll be back to scoring somewhere between 80 and 100, even being the sole ruck. So I don't even like him as a bridge option. Don't bother with Brody Grundy. So that's everything I wanted to cover. Everyone I've called out, coaches, players, fix your shit. SuperCoach, fix your servers, because honestly, it could happen again. And to all the players in my team, keep going, lift. And last thing for everyone that's still watching, thanks for being a viewer. I appreciate you. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you for the next video.